I want you to imagine something with me tonight. Something very simple. Something you have done so many times in your life that you have almost stopped noticing you are doing it. I want you to imagine that you are sitting somewhere quiet, perhaps at a table in the morning, with a warm cup of something in your hands, or perhaps in the evening in a chair near a window. And in that quiet moment, a thought comes to you. A thought of someone, a particular person, and without any effort at all, without any intention, you simply think of them. You hear their voice, perhaps, or you see their face, or you remember something they once said, or the way they laughed, or the particular way they looked at you on some ordinary afternoon that you have carried with you ever since. And then you wait. You look at the telephone. You think perhaps they will reach out today. Perhaps today will be the day. And then the day passes and they do not. And you go to sleep carrying that same thought, that same faith, that same quiet longing. And the next morning it begins again. Now I want you to notice something about that experience, because inside of it is everything I am going to teach you tonight. Everything. The answer is already there, hidden inside the very thing that troubles you. We are going to find it together, slowly, without any rush at all. Most people, when they find themselves in this situation, wanting to hear from someone, wanting that person to reach out, to write, to make contact, most people believe that the problem is simply one of waiting. They believe that the desired thing is somewhere out there in the future, approaching them slowly, and that their only task is to be patient enough for it to arrive. They treat what they want as though it belongs to a time that has not yet come, and so they wait and they hope and they check and they wait again. And I want to say to you tonight, with great gentleness and with great certainty, that this is the only mistake. This is the single error, not a moral error, not a failure of character. Simply a misunderstanding of how the inner world works. A small, understandable, entirely correctable misunderstanding. You see, when you imagine someone and feel a longing for them to reach out, what you are actually doing, without knowing it, is imagining a world in which they have not yet reached out. You are feeling the feeling of waiting. You are inhabiting very completely and very faithfully the inner experience of a person who does not yet have what they want. And the inner world, which is the only world that truly matters, simply takes that as its instruction. It says very well, we will continue, we will maintain this, we will preserve this feeling of not yet having, because that is clearly what is being asked of us. This is not punishment, this is not the universe being indifferent or cruel. It is simply the nature of the inner world, which is always obedient, always faithful, always producing on the outside exactly what is being held on the inside. Now I want to say this again, because it is important enough to say twice. The inner world does not hear your words. It does not read your intention. It does not reward your effort or your sincerity or your desire. It only ever reads one thing. It reads the feeling you are living in, the feeling you are inhabiting, the feeling that is right now, in this moment, the furniture of your inner life. And most people, when they want something, are living in the feeling of wanting it, which is the feeling of not having it, which is the very instruction they are constantly sending inward, renewed every hour, every glance at the telephone, every quiet moment of waiting. So tonight I am not going to give you a new technique. I am not going to ask you to work harder or to discipline your mind or to repeat something 100 times before you sleep. I am going to offer you something much simpler than that, a correction of direction, a small turning, like turning a shift just a few degrees, which, over time, takes you to an entirely different shore. The correction is this. Instead of feeling the feeling of wanting them to reach out, we are going to feel the feeling of it having already happened. I want to sit with that for a moment, because it may sound strange at first, and I want it to feel natural and true before we go any further. Think again of the morning at the table, the cup in your hand. Now, instead of the thought of waiting, instead of that quiet, hollow feeling of hoping, imagine instead that earlier that morning you picked up the telephone and there it was, a message from that person, from the very one you have been thinking of. And the message said something warm, something real, something that only they would say. Perhaps it was simple, perhaps it was only a few words. It does not matter what the words were. What matters is how you felt in that moment when you saw it. Feel that right now. Let yourself feel it, not as a fantasy, not as a wish, but as a memory, as something that has already happened and left its warmth in you. The way a good dream leaves its feeling behind even after the images have faded, there is a particular quality to that feeling. It is not excited. It is not desperate. It is not even surprised after the first instant. It is something quieter than any of those things. It is something that feels more than anything else like a settling, like something clicking into its right place, like a tension you had been carrying without even fully knowing you were carrying it, suddenly releasing. That is the feeling. That is exactly the feeling we are after. Not excitement, not triumph. Just that quiet, warm, certain settling. That is the feeling of a thing that has already become true. Now I want to address something. Because right now, as you sit with what I am saying, there is very likely a voice in you that is raising an objection. A perfectly reasonable voice. A sensible voice. And that voice is saying something like this. But it has not happened yet. And I cannot feel something as real that is not real. And if I pretend it has happened when it has not, am I not simply deceiving myself? I want to answer that voice very carefully, because it deserves a careful answer. What I am asking you to do is not pretend. Pretending is effortful. Pretending has a kind of falseness at its center that you can feel immediately, a tension, a strain, the way an actor feels when they do not believe their own lines. That is not what I am describing. What I am describing is something you do naturally every single day, without any effort at all. When you remember something that happened last year, a conversation, a journey, an afternoon with someone you love, you are not pretending. You are remembering. And the feeling that arises from that memory is entirely real. It is happening in your body, in your chest, in the quality of your breath. The event is in the past, but the feeling is happening now, right now, in the present moment, which is the only moment the inner world knows. And if a memory of something that has already happened can produce a real feeling now, then an imagination of something that is becoming true can produce exactly the same real feeling now. The inner world cannot tell the difference. It does not have access to your calendar. It does not check the date. It only knows what you are feeling, and it takes that feeling as its instruction for what to produce and preserve and bring into the outer world. So what I am asking you to do is remember forward to treat the thing you want as something that is already established in the inner world, already real in the place where all real things begin. Because that is exactly what it becomes when you feel it as already done. Now I want to walk you through something. I want to guide you through the actual inner experience so that you know not just the idea of what I am describing, but the precise feeling of it. So that later tonight or tomorrow morning or whenever you choose to sit quietly with this, you will know exactly where to go inside yourself. Find a comfortable position. Let your hands rest. Let your jaw unclench just a little. Let your shoulders drop just slightly to wherever they naturally want to be. Now I want you to bring to mind a moment in your life, any moment at all, when you received something unexpectedly good, not the greatest joy of your life. Something simpler than that, a letter that arrived when you needed it, a call from someone you had been missing, an afternoon that turned out better than you had expected. It does not matter what it was. What matters is the feeling that came with it. That particular quality of warmth, of rightness, of the world briefly showing you its good face. Find that feeling, not the memory of it, just the feeling itself. Let it be in your chest, in your throat, in the slight upward pull at the corners of your mouth that comes on its own when you are genuinely, quietly content. Hold that. Now, while you are holding that feeling, bring to mind the person you have been thinking of, not with longing, not with need, simply with warmth, the way you might think of someone while reading a letter they wrote you long ago. With that same fondness, that same ease, that same absence of any strain or urgency. And now gently, without force, let the thought come that this person has reached out, that this morning or this afternoon or this evening there was a message, that you saw it, that you read it, that something in you settled and relaxed in the way that only happens when something genuinely right has come to pass. Feel the settling. That is all I am asking you to feel. Not the excitement, not the relief, not the vindication, just the quiet, certain warm settling, the feeling of, yes, this is as it should be, this has come to pass. Stay with that feeling for as long as it stays easily with you. Do not force it to stay. Do not grip it. Simply let it be there, the way warmth is there after you step inside from the cold. It does not need to be maintained. It simply is. This is the correct inner state. This is the instruction your inner world has been waiting for. Not the longing, not the hoping, not the waiting. This settled, quiet, warm certainty that it has already been established. Now, there is another objection that arises for many people at this point, and it is a subtler objection than the first. But it is just as common, and it deserves just as careful an answer. The objection goes something like this. I understand what you are saying, and I can feel that feeling when I sit quietly and try. But the moment I get up and go about my day, it fades. The old feeling comes back. The waiting, the checking, the longing. And so what good is a few minutes of the right feeling if the rest of the day I am back in the wrong one? This is a very fair observation, and I want to acknowledge it fully before I answer it. You are right that a few moments of a feeling, surrounded by many hours of a contrary feeling, will not by itself change very much. The inner world is responsive, but it is also, in a sense, democratic. It tends to reflect the feeling that is most consistently, most habitually present. And habits of feeling are, in many ways, the deepest habits of all. Deeper than habits of behavior, deeper than habits of thought. But here is what I want you to understand. You do not need to hold the right feeling for the entire day. You do not need to police your mind or correct yourself every hour or sustain some perfect inner state from morning to night. That kind of effort is not only unnecessary, it is counterproductive because it introduces a strain, a tension, a trying, which is itself a form of the wrong feeling. What you need is something much more manageable. You need a moment, one genuine, unhurried, unforced moment in which you fully inhabit the feeling of it being already done. And then you need to let that moment do its work, the way a seed does its work after it has been planted. You do not dig up the seed every morning to check on it. You do not stand over it with effort and will. You plant it and you trust the ground and you go about your life. The night is the best time for this planting, because the moments just before sleep are the moments when the inner world is most receptive. The analytical mind grows quiet. The part of you that argues and doubts and calculates begins to step back. And what you carry into those last few moments before sleep, you carry deep, deeper than ordinary waking thought can reach. So here is what I want to offer you as a simple, effortless nightly practice. And I use the word practice loosely because it requires none of the discipline that word usually implies. It is simply this. As you lie down tonight and the room is dark and you feel the weight of your body settling into stillness, I want you to think of that person, not with longing, not with any reaching, simply with warmth, as though they are someone you are fond of, someone you think of kindly, someone whose face you carry in your heart without any particular heaviness. And then let yourself feel, just gently, just lightly, just enough to touch it, the feeling of having received their message, the feeling of that small, warm, settling rightness, not the excitement of it, not the story of it, just the feeling, the way a good day feels at its end, the way rest feels when it is genuine, quiet, certain, complete, and then let yourself drift. Do not hold the feeling. Do not try to make it last. Simply let it be the last thing you touch before sleep carries you away. The way you might rest your hand briefly on the shoulder of someone you love before leaving a room. That is all. That is the entire practice. One moment of genuine, quiet, settled feeling, carried into the threshold of sleep. Repeated not out of discipline, but out of the simple pleasure of it. Because when you find the right feeling, it does not feel like effort. It feels like relief. It feels like coming home to something that was always true, that you had only temporarily forgotten. And I want to say one more thing before I close tonight. There will be mornings when you wake and nothing has changed. The telephone will be quiet. And that familiar doubt will return, patient as weather, asking you whether any of this is real, whether you are fooling yourself, whether the world truly works in the way that I have described it. And on those mornings, I want you to do only one thing. I do not want you to double your effort. I do not want you to work harder or feel more intensely or add some new technique to compensate. I simply want you to be a little more patient when the doubt is persistent. Because doubt is loud, but it is not heavy. And certainty, real certainty, the kind that is rooted in genuine inner experience, is quiet, but it does not move. It simply remains. And over time, the quiet thing that does not move will always outlast the loud thing that is only passing through. You have felt the feeling I described tonight, even if only for a moment, even if only faintly. That feeling is real. It happened. It is yours. And the inner world registered it, the way still water registers even the lightest thing that touches its surface. You have already begun. Not tonight, not when you first heard my voice this evening. You began the moment you wanted this. The moment the thought of this person arose in you and you recognized it as something that mattered. That wanting was the beginning of the asking. Tonight we have simply clarified the answer. We have turned the ship a few degrees, and a few degrees held with patience is all it ever takes. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to be consistent every single day. You do not need to be free of doubt or longing or the ordinary fluctuations of a human heart. You only need to return, whenever you remember, to the feeling of it being already true, already established, already done, already yours, in the place where all things are decided before they appear in the world of ordinary sight. Rest in that tonight. Let it be simple. Let it be quiet. Let it be the last thing you feel before sleep takes you. Good evening, my friends, and I'll see you next time.